Right, we should be live. It probably take about 10 seconds.
Okay. Live.
It hasn't come up yet. Yep, I think we're there now.
Okay. Good evening. It's my understanding we've now gone live. We're in a rather strange situation in that we're sitting behind a screen that doesn't enable us to see whether you can see us. So I do hope everything's okay. A lot of you are telling us you're waiting for the meeting. I hope somebody can tell us very quickly that it's all fine. I'm here tonight with Mike Leddy, my fellow councillor, and Joe Green, who's been leading for us on the Creating Places for People in Kings Heath. Tonight is very much the first stage of the conversations that we need to have. We're going to be setting out to you the broad-based sort of briefing on what we are looking to do with the low traffic neighbourhoods, what it means for you, how you can input, and very much how it fits into the broader context. Can we be clear? This is about reducing the traffic in our area. It is about making our area better for the residents who live here. So very much this is about you and us being part of shaping where we're going, how we make life better, and very much ensuring that we can actually truly address those issues that climate requires of us, that our community requires of us, and ultimately, as we have learned through COVID, where our need to find space and to actually change very much how we shape and make our places, both in terms of for the good of the community and business in our locality. I'll hand over to Joe Green now, who's going to run through a presentation, and we will then be picking up questions at the end. The questions in the Q&A section, you can list through as you go, and we will try and pull those together at the end, and equally we will be picking up on them at further points. Mike and I will be coming out and about as soon as we can in terms of COVID to see individual streets, but this is very much an iterative process, and really looking forward to working with you all and hearing your comments and concerns over the weeks and months ahead. Joe, over to you.
Joe, I think you're on mute.
Joe, you need to unmute yourself, Pat.
Hello. Right, I'm hoping that people can both hear me okay and see the screen. We've got the delights of battling with technology. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. The first part of the session is to provide a bit of a briefing and give you quite a bit of information around the Kings Heath low traffic neighbourhood pilot, and then at the end, hopefully the last sort of half of the session will be much more for sort of questions that myself and Councillor Trickett and Councillor Leddy will be able to respond. We've had a number of questions emailed in advance, but also people are able to add questions and comments in the Q&A chat throughout the presentation. It's a very sort of strange way to be doing things. We appreciate that, but it's kind of all we've got at the moment, and we are really keen to spread the word as much as we can and get information out. So this just sort of shows how we want to give a bit of policy and background to the Kings Heath pilot, a bit of an overview of low traffic neighbourhood approach and how that's been developed in Kings Heath, and then touch on some of the sort of initial feedback, delivery, next steps and questions at the end. Basically, Places for People is a new programme in Birmingham that we launched this June, and it is around reclaiming local streets for people so that they feel safe to walk and cycle, but also so they feel able to play out, they're able to socialise, and so that people benefit from cleaner air, a quieter, safer environment. And I think something that sort of really chimes in terms of what places for people looks like is if we sort of go back to March, April time, and we were really at the sort of height of lockdown, we did sort of pick up a lot of people commenting around how different it felt in local residential streets. And it's kind of looking at how can we lock in some of those benefits as hopefully we do sort of ease out of lockdown, although obviously it's still incredibly uncertain time at the moment, and particularly so in Birmingham. And the way that that is achieved is, one, by sort of reducing the level of motor traffic, and two, encouraging people to walk and cycle more where they can. This is something that we've been developing and been keen to progress for some time now. Back in January, we launched a draft Birmingham Transport Plan, and one of 4 big moves within that document was prioritising active travel in local neighbourhoods, trying to create a situation where walking and cycling is how most people get around their local area most of the time. Not everyone, because we appreciate not everyone can, but people who are able to and want to often feel that they can do that more and more for local trips. Creating an environment where cars no longer dominate street life around homes and around schools, and resetting residential neighbourhoods and our local centres such as Kings Heath High Street as places where people are put first. So this was a sort of a key pillar within the draft Birmingham Transport Plan. It's also covered across a whole sort of range of other policy areas within the council. So at the start of the year, Cabinet agreed a new walking and cycling strategy and network plan. And one of the things outlined in that around developing an environment for walking and cycling was about developing low traffic neighbourhoods and car-free school streets through, sorry, a bit of a technical term, filtered permeability. I will talk about modal filters a bit later on, but also parking management and streetscape public realm improvements. This is a key part of the clean air strategy that we consulted on last year, that sets out how we need to improve the wider transport network, especially around public transport, whilst increasing the sort of range of options people have available to them for making cleaner, more environmentally friendly and also healthier journeys. And this also links in very much with the climate emergency that the City Council declared last June, and the Route to Zero task force that's been established last autumn to oversee how that climate emergency declaration brings about change within Birmingham. Transport is one of 7 work streams and service areas being focused on by that task force, and this sort of work is a key part of that. So even sort of pre-COVID, this was very much at the heart of what we were looking to develop. And then, as people are fully aware, the whole world changed at the start of this year, and the emergence of a global pandemic basically changed everything. Changed a lot around transport. Traffic levels dropped to about 30% of usual levels overnight, and as over the last few weeks and months we've started to look at coming out of lockdown, what we've wanted to do is see, well, how do we ensure that that is a low carbon clean air recovery? How do we continue to provide safe space for walking and cycling for people who have been using that as ways of getting around over the past few months? But also now this new sort of challenge around the need to enable space for social distancing, and to support people to use space quite differently. So in May, we published an emergency Birmingham Transport Plan, which was very much in line with the vision and big moves of the draft Birmingham Transport Plan, but looking at how that was applied to a very different sort of climate and environment. One thing it looked at was delivering low traffic neighbourhood pilots in at least 2 areas, but also looking at how we extend that across the whole of Birmingham. And it's not just the City Council that's looking at this. This was a walking and cycling plan published by the Department for Transport in June, and low traffic neighbourhoods were emphasised as a real sort of key focus within that document. So the government and the Department for Transport are very much on board with this as well, in terms of introducing low traffic neighbourhoods, and are looking to bring forward quite significant funding to local authorities who wish to progress this. And they've already started to provide some funding for that. So the Emergency Active Travel Fund was launched earlier this year. This was the start of a £2 billion package. £250 million being made available through the Emergency Active Travel Fund this year. It's for temporary interventions that create an environment that's safe for both walking and cycling. And again, low traffic neighbourhoods were very much featured in the guidance around that fund, and local authorities have had to demonstrate that they've got swift, meaningful plans to reallocate road space, and that does include point closures or modal filters, or going back to this term of filtered permeability. The Emergency Active Travel Fund is being made available in 2 tranches. Tranche 1 is what's currently underway. That's sort of July, August, September time. Tranche 2, we've got a funding submission in with the DfT at the moment. That's for the sort of period from October to March, but it is very much for schemes to be delivered this year. And just to give you a bit of an idea of timescales, to sort of get across that, in line with the emergency transport plan being published, we have been working very quickly to respond to this opportunity. So that funding was only announced on the 9th of May, and then at the end of May we got the sort of guidance and criteria. Had to put a submission deadline in within 9 days, I think it was, including the weekend. So that went in on the 5th of June. By the end of June, we got notification of a successful application and received that funding letter in 7th of July. We were given some indicative allocations and we worked to those. The feedback from the Department for Transport that our submission was strong, and as such they actually ended up providing additional funding. But basically for the Emergency Active Travel Fund first tranche, Birmingham's receiving just over £1 million, but we are also putting £500,000 in ourselves to match fund that and make the funding go a bit further. And we are looking to make that funding go pretty far in Birmingham. So within tranche 1, we're delivering 14 schemes, pop-up cycle lanes across the city, some work in local centres, including Sturchley and Moseley, a lot of changes in the city centre around our city centre segments project, and then the launch of Places for People with 2 low traffic neighbourhood pilots in Kings Heath and Lascelles, and also some sort of early demonstration measures in other parts of the city, including Moseley, Bourneville and Castle Vale. And likewise, the timescale for how the Kings Heath low traffic neighbourhood pilot has developed to date. One of the reasons why I'm sharing this information is, I think, over the past couple of months that there have been some sort of questions around, 1, why are things taking so long, and 2, what's happening? Nothing's happening. Just want to sort of get across that a lot has been going on behind the scenes around the sort of development work required within this to bring forward a deliverable scheme. Obviously, we only got the confirmation of funding at the start of July, but we had been sort of mobilising and bringing in technical support with this. At the start of July, we agreed the study area, which I'll show in a future slide, and then ever since then we've been sort of working to bring this forward as quickly as possible, really. We got some draft strategies and options on the 15th of July, went through a whole internal review process with getting various colleagues to comment on that, and then this was where we did first start to share information more publicly. So on the 24th of July we uploaded that information following an internal review onto the Commonplace site. We then had a week or 2 where we did start to get initial feedback on that, and we're able to sort of use that to review exactly what we deliver as part of the first phase of the pilot. We agreed that design brief on the 5th of August, held a workshop to go through exactly what was going to be done couple of days later, and then we got the final plans through on the 12th of August and announced those details last week on the 18th of August in terms of phase 1. Just sort of quickly to sort of give a little bit of background, I know for some people you will probably have seen quite a bit of this previously or been fully aware, but for others this could be a lot sort of new information. So just to give a sort of very brief overview, basically low traffic neighbourhoods are groups of residential streets where through trips by motor vehicles are either discouraged or removed. What that doesn't mean is that people living within the area, visiting the area, working in the area can't get to everywhere where they currently do. It's just sometimes it's by a slightly different route. So people will still be able to continue to drive onto their street, have visitors, get deliveries, etc. Also, low traffic neighbourhoods is looking at the roads around these residential streets that border the area and are looking to reduce traffic on those roads too, and also looking at what else is needed on those roads to create a safer environment, whether that's installing crossing points, looking at traffic calming measures, and on some of the more main roads, more arterial routes, looking at things like cycle lanes on there. And it just comes back to that what Places for People is all about. By reducing the amount of traffic across the whole area, it starts to become nicer to be outside, quieter, safer to walk, cycle, play or chat. And somewhere that is often held up as an example of where this has been done over the past few years. This is Waltham Forest. This was one of 3 Mini Holland programmes that Transport for London funded starting in 2014. And it is often sort of held up as the one that has been particularly successful. These 2 photos are the before and after images of the exact same street. The buildings on the left hand side, one of the photos is taken from slightly further down, but that Spar store is on both of those, just a bit further down on the right hand picture. There's lots more information about Waltham Forest on their project website if people want to look at that. But also what's happened with Waltham Forest is they've done a lot of evaluation of this, working with universities, with King's College, to assess the impact of low traffic neighbourhoods in Waltham Forest. And what that's shown is yes, it's encouraged more people to walk and cycle, but what it's also done is it's improved people's life expectancy across the whole area. It's had a very positive impact on the economy, sort of seeing an increase in retail and also a reduction in vacancy rates in premises across that. And it's seen a substantial reduction in traffic levels. Within the low traffic neighbourhood areas themselves, 56%, but across the whole area, 38%. And it's also seen the other benefits that we know come with vehicle reduction, is a reduction in transport related air pollution and all the other benefits. So what we set off to do at the start of the Kings Heath pilot project was look at the overall sort of Kings Heath area and identify a sort of a pilot project study area. The technical approach to this is done by looking at the key route network across the city, looking at where the primary and secondary routes are on our road network. Often that's around where some of the bus services run. Often it's where roads are either A roads or B roads. And from that you sort of create these area extents and identify some low traffic neighbourhoods within them. The roads that border the extents are still part of the low traffic neighbourhood, and it's really important that they are seen as such, and that we know that people live on main roads too, and what we certainly don't want to do is move traffic from one place to another. We're looking to reduce traffic overall. What we did for Kings Heath within the pilot is the study area identified 4 area extents, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we used that as the basis for baseline analysis, looking at all sorts of different data that was available around parking provision, around access and service requirements, looking at through traffic data, and then sort of developed how we'd look to deliver low traffic neighbourhoods across the whole of Kings Heath. What came out from that work during July was that it was necessary to take a phased approach. One reason for that is the available budget. And even when you sort of look at Waltham Forest and the money they've had, they've still delivered it very much in phases. But the available budget was basically such that we could only really deliver low traffic neighbourhoods across 2 of those areas. The other reason was, as we started to do a bit of engagement, we did get some feedback, particularly around the eastern side of the high street, in terms of some of the bordering roads, places like Addison Road, Springfield Road, Valentine Road. People living on those roads understandably concerned about the impact on them. Discussions with the sort of technical support team have highlighted that there are other things that can be brought forward there, and also potentially, if we sort of look at that, areas 2 and 3 could potentially be combined into one low traffic neighbourhood area, but that would require some changes to Addison Road, either around putting in a bus gate for the buses that currently use that route, or rerouting those services, which does take a bit more time. So sort of 2 reasons for a phased approach: the available budget and to allow a bit further development on certain areas. But what we are looking to do is move forward very quickly with this now, and bring forward low traffic neighbourhoods to the west of the high street in the next month, to continue the development work on the eastern side of the high street in the next 2 to 3 months. And then also that final area to the south, starting to sort of go more into Brandwood. That was identified as a future study area, but we do want to sort of get that lined up as phase 3. Alongside that, we also have some places for people funding for measures in other areas, and we are looking at a couple of things in Moseley, linked to previous projects around a Safer Routes to School scheme, but also around an issue highlighted by some of the baseline analysis around restricting east-west movements from Kings Heath local centre to Moseley local centre. So we are looking to deliver some interventions on Poplar Road, Cambridge Road and School Road, and I've put that as phase 1B. It's about a week or so behind where we currently are with the rest of Kings Heath. We should have designs and further information to share on that and communicate later this week. That will also lead on to further development across the wider sort of South Moseley area, which again has been identified as a future cell option to the top right hand side of that map, and that will sort of follow. So that's the plans for the phased approach. I now just want to sort of cover a little bit of feedback from the Commonplace digital engagement platform that has been running since the 24th of July, and just sort of share some figures. Actually, while I think of it, just so everyone knows, all of these slides will be made available after the meeting and will be circulated to everyone, and will be published online as well. So don't worry if you miss some information on any of these slides. We will make those available to you after this evening. But what's been great with having the Commonplace site up and running is we've received a lot of comments from people of a range of types. Over 1,300 received as of last Monday. We do continue to monitor that. We get downloads every single week, and carry out a sort of assessment of that. What it does tell us is firstly, people indicate whether or not they live in the area in some cases, so we can sort of break that down. Just to highlight for these stats, this is about comments rather than people. It is possible for people to make more than one comment, and that's absolutely fine. We kind of encourage that. We can run similar reports that do this by respondent, but just sort of highlight in there, I think whoever it is out there who's winning at the moment, somebody has made 46 comments, not all of them negative, not all of them positive, a bit of both, which is great. So we got that broken down. I think the second is about 9, so this is a good range of people. It is good sort of 1,000, but what you see from this, so it is in terms of the feeling of people around Kings Heath being a low traffic neighbourhood, around 60% of people are very positive around that, another 10% mostly positive, 8% neutral, and then you've got sort of 25% who are either negative or mostly negative. And in terms of the comments, that's reflected in terms of how many sort of positive comments we've received, how many negative comments, and how many neutral ones. Again, all of this can be broken down by respondents as well, so we can sort of look at how many people are positive. This is not by any means a referendum, but this is a good way of gauging a little bit of feeling and getting some feedback. We asked through that commonplace site what people think are the main problems in the area. There were a few options that people could select from, but people were also able to add in what other problems were. The top answer, I feel like family fortunes here, the highest responses were around too much traffic, but then there's all sorts of other issues around speeding, pollution, parking issues, people feeling that it's not safe to walk or cycle, to cross the road, dangerous junctions, and 2% of people think that there are no problems at all. So it just sort of shows that you ask 100 people, you get very different 100 answers. And then on the right hand side, some of the other problems that people who selected other were able to input. And then what do we need to do to address some of those issues? Again, people could select from some of the available options or put in some of their own. Top answer on that one was things to stop rat running, which is quite fortunate, seeing how that's one of the main objectives of a low traffic neighbourhood, but also highlighted the need for safer crossing points, and also a desire for more green spaces, for cycle parking, for seating. Again, 3% of people don't want to see anything change in the area. But as I say, we can't please everyone. And again, a list there of some of the other changes that people who've put other have selected, and we continue to look at that. And then finally, just to sort of pull out some of the common themes from the comments that have been received. We are going through that, we are coding it, it is getting analysed, and that will continue to run throughout the duration of this pilot. So please do continue to engage with that site and give us your thoughts through there. It's one of the few ways that we are able to engage at the moment. But as I say, there's lots of support for the scheme. There's been a lot of positive comments, people that feel that Kings Heath will be nicer, streets will be safer, it'll be good for people's health, and it'll also be good for businesses. Some people disagree. A lot of concern around traffic being displaced elsewhere, and that is something that we need to monitor closely. Some people feel that there are ways that it will be bad for businesses, bad for residents. Some concerns around equality impact assessment and how people will access where they live, and also some comments around the need for a clear monitoring plan and sort of evidence based on this. I'm getting close to the end of the presentation, you'll be pleased to know, so I can give my voice a rest and we can bring people in to look at some of the questions and comments. But I imagine a lot of people want to know what happens next. The first thing to say is it will be a sort of a staged approach to delivery. We will be looking to move quite quickly in the next week or two, partly because of the funding criteria, and we will be making some quick temporary changes to streets. What we then want to do is start a conversation around how that space is used differently, and that's where community involvement, engagement with residents, with businesses is really key, because we want to work with all of you to look at how that street space is used differently. And then towards the end of the pilot, we can start to think about making some of those changes a bit more permanent. And as I say, we do want people's views to really inform this whole process. To try and give you a bit of an idea about what that might look like and what you might see changing in the area, stage one is very much quick temporary changes, and it uses what we refer to as traffic management equipment. So in terms of getting some of the measures in place, it will start off with some signs, but we do want to move to that sort of stage two quite quickly, but involve local people in how that's done, and how measures are put in place. So sort of stage one, stage two will be delivered over the next sort of month or so. So sort of by the end of September, we are expecting to have sort of most of stage two completed. Stage three on the right hand side comes a lot later on down the line, and this is a pilot. These are temporary trial measures, and it may be in some locations we never get to that point, or we decide that stuff will be done elsewhere, and we will touch on the engagement process as part of the question and answer session, I am sure. And then some of the sort of the plans as to where you will start to see these measures appearing. within this Kings Heath West area. So the area to the west of the High Street, bordered by the railway line, Avenue Road and Vicarage Road, will see some of those modal filters applied, particularly at the High Street. Those sections bordering the High Street that are currently one way, that will be suspended during this pilot, so they'll become two-way. The modal filters will be located in such a way that there are some sort of turning head provided, so that people are able to turn and use those streets in both directions. I know some people might find that hard to visualise at the moment, knowing how much on-street parking there is, but these approaches have been used in very similar environments in London. We're also looking to pedestrianise the section of York Road between the High Street and Waterloo Road. That will be with a modal filter on the Waterloo Road end, with a soft road closure on the right hand side, so that access and loading is still provided, and we want to work with all the local businesses on York Road to make sure that they can still have deliveries as necessary, but it's probably at certain times, and then now that space can be used in different ways. Also a modal filter on Silver Street just after the Lidl car park, so that can still be accessed from the High Street, and also a modal filter on Highbury Road to prevent some of the access cutting around that corner. We appreciate that it is still possible, if you really want to sort of use a bit of a route to make a circuitous trip through the whole area. We do feel that is very unlikely, in that it's not a attractive option, but we will continue to review that and see if some of these modal filters need to be located elsewhere. And then the second part of the phase one area is the triangle formed by Ulster Road, Vicarage Road and Howard Road, where 3 modal filters will be installed at the Howard Road end. Again, the one-way section on All Saints Road will be suspended for the trial, and we are suspending the no right turn out of All Saints Road onto Vicarage Road. And I think, although I'm waiting for it to be 100% confirmed, that we will also suspend the right-hand turn from Vicarage Road onto the Ulster Road. So that will mean that people accessing the Sainsbury's car park, for example, could come out and turn right and right that way. Last couple of quick slides on sort of what happens next, and then we'll open it up to sort of questions and discussions with our ward councillors. As I've mentioned, you will sort of see these measures begin to be implemented over the coming weeks. I have actually asked our contractor who's delivering this today to give me a start date, but I've not had a reply to that yet. But I do think it is going to be almost like within the week, so probably sort of like something to be confirmed, and we will get that announced as soon as we can, because understandably people are going to want to know. We would like to organise some pop-up community events around these going in, and particularly around how we move to stage 2 and getting some planters in, and what is installed in those, and working with residents, because this is about creating places for people on your street. We are in a very uncertain position at the moment with the situation in Birmingham, with a slight increase in cases, and the possibility of some further restrictions in the next week or so. So we're going to have to basically play that by ear and see what we can do over the coming week or two. But we do want to do pop-up community events and work with residents and others around that. As I've said before, these are temporary trial measures initially, and they will be monitored very closely to assess their impact. And one of the questions we will cover is, how will this be monitored? There is potential for changes and modifications to be made. It's going to be delivered through an experimental traffic regulation order, and within the first sort of 6 months we are able to make all sorts of changes there, as well as that serving as a formal consultation period. But I would sort of just counter that with that there is always a bit of a bedding in period with this approach. So what we probably won't do is put something in and then someone says that it's not working and it needs moving to the other side of the road the following week. So we would allow a little bit of time before determining the overall impact of measures. But within that 6-month pilot, there is scope to make some changes, and I think Councillor Trickett has used the analogy of a chessboard previously, and there is scope for different things to be trialled. In terms of some of the other phases within the Kings Heath low traffic neighbourhood pilot, development and design work on those other phases is continuing. As I say, we should be communicating a further update on what I've termed phase 1B on popular Cambridge school roads later this week. We will be writing to all residents in that affected area as soon as we've got those details to share too. We are also continuing to progress some of the previously shared plans that are on Commonplace around the phase 2 across the eastern side of the high street. But as I've said, we are reviewing how those proposals can be enhanced through some further measures, particularly around some of those sort of bordering roads. I'm quite happy to sort of say we are looking at the situation with Addison Road and do want to try and bring something forward that stops that being used as a through route. But we do need to look at the current classification of the road, the fact that it's used by bus services, and whether that's either done by rerouting or whether it's done through a bus gate, and trying to work with residents of Addison Road on what changes they want to see. These future phases are partly dependent on the outcome of our Tranche 2 funding submission, although we're fairly confident of at least receiving some funding, and Kings Heath is top of the queue for any low traffic neighbourhood funding. So I think we can be fairly sort of confident of future funding coming there. But we are also developing plans for how this is resourced beyond this financial year, and looking to build in an ongoing Places for People programme within our Transport and Highways Capital programme. So I think the sort of the positive news is that through this pilot, Kings Heath is front of the queue for anything else that comes forward around low traffic neighbourhoods across Birmingham. And finally, there will be ongoing engagement with residents and other stakeholders across all of the areas affected. I've seen and completely take on board comments from people around why we haven't carried out formal consultation, why they're only just finding out about this now. The whole situation is completely unprecedented, and we've needed to respond to an emergency situation in a particular way. But one of the key sort of elements of low traffic neighbourhoods is that they are shaped and led by local communities. Ideally, it would probably take 6 months to do what we've done so far. We'd hold public meetings, we'd do design workshops, we'd be out on the street, at the school gate, on the high street, and in a previous life with a DIY Streets Kings Heath project, I was involved in some work similar to that, and we spent sort of 12-18 months doing a lot of this engagement. And then we got to the end of that and we had a brilliant plan for transforming the area, but we didn't have any funding to do it. So we're now in a bit of a sort of reverse situation, whereas we do have funding, we have an opportunity, but the funding criteria is such that we do need to move relatively quickly. But engagement, communications and consultation is central to the future delivery of this, and I commit, and I know that your ward councillors similarly will work together to find as many ways as possible to enable people to feed into this project and really shape the pilot, and particularly shape what happens next. You'll be glad to know I'm going to be quiet for a moment, and I'm going to hand back to our councillors who are hosting this evening to add any further comments, and then we'll sort of run through some of the questions that we've received in advance and any other questions that we've received during the presentation. But thank you very much for your time. I hope you found it interesting, and this is very much the start of a process, and much more will follow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe. And thank you also for all the incredible amount of work you've put into this over the summer. Some of us have managed to grab a few days away. I know you have been working non-stop, so I'm sure the residents, whatever their views of these proposals, can actually see you've been an officer who's really gone the extra yard on this. I want to just sort of pick up on a couple of the general points, and then I think ask Joe to come back on a couple of the specifics that have come up, and just see also if Mike's got any observations. Can I, first of all, some people have sort of said, where's this all come from? And Joe referenced the work that we did years back on the high street where we created parklets. Kings Heath Residents Forum, Kings Heath Can. There has been ongoing work around sort of core Kings Heath. There's been a lot of fantastic organisation of residents around Hazelhurst Road, Vicarage Road and around there, looking for change, and we've subsequently picked up on a lot of other demands. As people have pointed out, there has been ongoing issues on other roads, not in this ward, but School Road, where the changes do impact upon this. So I think what we could be fairly confident about was that we did know and are very clear that the majority of residents understood do nothing was not an option across the ward. We quite simply have too many cars on our roads that mean it's not safe for our children in terms of routes to school. It's not good for our health in terms of pollution, and we will not address the needs of our climate unless we change. I think for Mike and I, one of the pluses why we argued for us to be at the forefront of the low traffic neighbourhoods is Joe's point. This will come to the city. You know, there will be a roll out of this because we will have to do it if we're going to meet air quality climate requirements. What we are doing here is giving the residents, the businesses of Kings Heath an opportunity to shape some of the proposals. What I think we also want to emphasise is we are very conscious of the border roads and what that means for them. And again, Joe, Mike and I had a conversation at some point during the summer. I'd walked Springfield Road, I'd walked Addison Road, and I'd looked at what was on the commonplace comments, and I was clear that there were issues there that I could not answer and we needed to look. So we are very clear that we are responding to those concerns, but what we're now confident of, what we're going to move forward with for the next few months is secure enough in terms of the responses we had that we can then work through some of the details. I think there's some very specific points that have been raised that we can come back on. A couple of points have been made about gigs at Hare and Hounds and sort of hospitality in general. I think one thing to actually remember is the hospitality sector has been hit hardest through COVID in terms of impact upon business. What we are doing with York Road gives us an opportunity to test how in a post-COVID world we can create safe, enjoyable social space where businesses can thrive and communities can connect. So it's very much, again, a test and see, and we will very much work with businesses. And certainly both Mike and I've had conversations with Adam Reagan from Hare and Hounds already on ensuring absolutely that gigs have to go ahead, slight vested interest possibly in that one. I think the other thing that has come up, and I will ask Joe to pick up on the detail of this, but let's be clear, the law still stands on this, so we will impact assess all these proposals. So in terms of the impact upon people with additional needs, we have a lot of children who go to schools in our area with additional needs. We have to create an atmosphere for children with autism that actually means it's a safe environment. Equally, for the mum concerned about the disabled parking spaces and actually being able to get about, please believe we will do everything within our powers to make your life better through this, these proposals, than actually to make it worse. We all know some people absolutely need to use cars, and again, one of the things we need to do, and Mike and I are more than happy to pick up on individual cases where there are concerns along that. Mike, have you got anything to add before I'd like Joe to come back, particularly on the bus routes, because that seems to have come up a few times, and also how we're going to deal with disability impact assessment?
I've got a few things. First of all, as councillors, we get inundated with requests to do something about speeding cars going down residential roads. This is one option. What we're introducing is a temporary scheme, and if residents feel that it is worthwhile moving forward on, then we as your local councillors will pursue that. I feel that we need to take people with us. This is a case of councillors becoming community leaders. And it's not often this happens, but you know, we do need to lead on this. I think I'll leave it there, and I think we now move to Joe.
Okay, so in terms of some of the questions we've received in advance, I've tried to sort of summarise those into particular themes. I acknowledge that these will be quite general responses. A number of people have got in touch with us about sort of specific questions around their street or a particular issue, and we will be responding to all of those individually in the next couple of days. But I think sort of the first thing, and some of these I will have sort of touched on in the presentation, so I'll reference back. But people have asked about the sort of the timescale, the phased approach, why we're doing some areas, not other areas, why we aren't doing it all at once. So part of it is down to budget, but also part of it is looking at other parts of the country and learning from how they've approached it. Also, the Department for Transport have been very sort of clear that they are expecting councils to move quickly on this, and part of the funding criteria is around having the majority of schemes delivered within a couple of months of receipt of funding. On the basis that they are temporary trial schemes. So timescale, as I say, we are expecting measures to begin to go in the next week or so, and we will confirm that as soon as I get a absolute start date from the contractor, but that is just the sort of start. A lot of comments and a lot of questions have been around the sort of the displacement issue, and a concern that all we're doing is moving traffic from one place to another, and that this will have a very negative impact on some of those bordering roads, and that it's quite sort of divisive in terms of turning one street against another, some people being part of the low traffic neighbourhoods, other being left out. As I emphasised earlier, the roads bordering some of these area extents are still part of the low traffic neighbourhood, and we are looking to reduce traffic across the whole area. Partly by restricting some of the through routes means there'll be less traffic going onto those roads, but also as we start to encourage walking and cycling for local trips and make that more of a viable option, then we'll see a bit of modal shift. And I think what we have seen from some of the other schemes, particularly in Waltham Forest, is a concept of sort of traffic evaporation after schemes have been in place for a few months, where there is a reduction even on those bordering roads. I think it's important that we're totally honest. In the first week or two, there probably will be some negative impacts, and we will be monitoring that closely to make sure that it's tolerable and that we mitigate it wherever we can. But we do expect to see sort of benefits on those roads as we move forward. But that is a large part of why we are looking at this eastern side of the high street and exactly how we implement something that doesn't have a detrimental impact on some of those border roads. A lot of people have asked about why there hasn't been formal consultation. The legal answer is that it's not required as part of an experimental traffic regulation order, and that happens within the first 6 months of the order being in place. But there's also the sort of fact that we've been working to incredibly tight timescales. We've tried to keep people informed as best we can, putting information online, getting letter drops out. We're also incredibly restricted by the current circumstance. I would have quite happily worked with your councillors to hold a ward forum public meeting on this over the past few weeks, and also this evening. It's very strange doing this presentation to a laptop screen in my spare bedroom with just a teddy bear for company. I would much rather be in a room with you all, and I'm quite happy to, as I have done previously, spend considerable time there having individual conversations. We know that not everyone is online, and we are trying to find different ways to reach people, and also we value any support anyone can offer with that. So talking to neighbours, friends, spreading the word. We have put some information out via a letter drop. We have put a comment box up in Sainsbury's, and we have had a couple of responses from that, which have been added into Commonplace. We are a little bit limited in what we can do, but we are doing what we can there.
Can I just come in there as well, because I know there's been a number of comments about Avenue Road as well. One, I'm really grateful for people for their really constructive comments and their desire to work for us. For example, as long as COVID measures allow, with Avenue Road residents, what I've said is that Mike and I would be more than happy a couple of weeks into it to meet with residents in Kings Heath Park, where we're in line with COVID restrictions, but we can actually have a proper discussion with you and actually look at what's happening. And please be assured, as your councillors, we will be walking the beat to keep an idea of where it's going. I just wanted to make it aware that I had already committed to do a park meeting with Avenue Road residents. Sorry, Joe.
No, that's great. And it brings us on nicely to the question around monitoring, because people rightly want to know how we'll be monitoring this pilot, how we'll determine whether it's been a success, how that will be measured. I've got a colleague leading on a monitoring plan for low traffic neighbourhoods across Birmingham. What that's looking to do is, one, what existing data is available to us through constant traffic counts that are in place. We have a lot of access to bus journey time data, which is often sort of real-time information. We've also got some existing air quality monitoring stations in a few parts of the city. We will also be looking to carry out monitoring specifically of the low traffic neighbourhood. We'll be looking to do a household survey. We're arranging some sort of traffic counts on identified roads within the low traffic neighbourhood area. Again, to be totally honest, there is a real challenge at the moment around how you establish an accurate baseline. As I mentioned, that transport changed massively at the start of lockdown and dropped to 30%. So even if we did carry out loads and loads of baseline monitoring over the past month, it would give almost like a false baseline. So I think in some ways we are relying on existing data to set some of that, but are getting some counts arranged on particular locations. We will also use your feedback and comments through both the Commonplace site and carrying out a household survey to get feedback from the local area, and I hope and expect we will be out and about quite a bit over the coming months to speak to people, obviously at a social distance, about how it's all going. And there will be an element of sort of like observation in that as well. So colleagues from our project delivery team will be monitoring and observing the measures as they go in, and particularly at a very early stage. So really sort of working with yourselves to monitor the impact of the scheme over the course of time. Sorry, the acronym TM is traffic management, but we had a lot of questions around what signage will be in place, different routes and everything. So just pick up a few bits of this really quickly. As part of the implementation of the phase 1 measures, we are looking to include some advance warning signage. Some people who are regular frequenters of Twitter may have seen some of the options around road closed signs and road open for people signs. We will probably have a combination of those, both in terms of what legally needs to be in place, but also how we really sort of promote the positive aspects of this scheme. With low traffic neighbourhoods, you don't generally sign diversion routes because this isn't about closing the road for some gasworks for a couple of weeks and sending everyone round. This is around changing the road layout, and people will sort of largely find their alternative routes. But obviously, if people do want to get in touch and are concerned that they don't know how to get to their friend's house all of a sudden, then I'm sure we'll be very happy to support people with that. People have asked a few questions about how vehicles will actually turn on some of these streets. They feel that they're quite narrow and parked on double parked. The modal filter locations have been sort of very carefully identified to provide a turning head as part of what's going in. So they're either being positioned next to some side roads in a couple of places, or where the road is at its widest. There may be 1 or 2 locations where we need to remove a parking bay or a parking space on either side, but that will be very limited and minimal. But it will be possible to turn on those roads, and streets that are currently one way will operate as 2-way sections just for the people living on those roads, because there won't be any through traffic. In terms of some of the current one-way signs and no entry signs, where they are being changed, that they will be suspended and bagged up and covered up. And I think I mentioned in the presentation how some of the existing band turns.
Can you?
I'll be as fast as I can, yeah. How some of the current band turned restrictions will be suspended. I see that bus routes have come up a bit in the chat, and we understand that with both Addison Road and Avenue Road. We are a bit restricted on what we can do on roads where bus routes currently run. We could ultimately, with a highway authority, we could close them, but we would then get complaints from both National Express and some people who use those services. So it is better to work with the bus operators as to how that's done. Rerouting services could be an option, but bus gates is another option, and a bus gate is a type of modal filter that could restrict through traffic but still allow buses to serve. So that's something that we will and can and will look at for Addison Road, for Avenue Road, and other places where that's appropriate. Conscious of time, so I'm going to whiz through, but impact on businesses. We are doing this to benefit the area. We want to benefit everyone within the area, including the businesses that are a key part of the Kings Heath community. We are looking again to install measures in a way that ensures people can still receive deliveries, sometimes by a different route, but obviously making sure it's an appropriate route, ensuring that access to car parks remains. So a couple of places, modal filters are deliberately located in a way that ensures there is still access to car parks. And we have been in touch with Kings Heath Bid, and will continue to be so, to find different ways of working with businesses impacted by these proposals, potentially run similar sessions to this for bid members. Also happy to speak directly with businesses themselves, and have been in touch with a couple of Kings Heath businesses already. We did get a few questions that were partly covered by the frequently asked questions document, but just to emphasise, people will still have access to everywhere that they currently have access. It's just sometimes the route does change, but you'll still be able to get everywhere you currently do from where you currently go. Emergency services will be informed of all these changes and will update their sat-nav systems. Again, experience from London is that as long as they know where road closures are in place, they can ensure that their sat-nav system doesn't send them down there, and we will ensure that they are informed and confirmed that they've made those changes ahead of measures going in. The main thing that impacts on emergency services is congestion, so if we can do things to reduce traffic congestion, that should be positive for emergency service response time, and likewise engaging with waste collection service to ensure that they are still able to collect everyone's waste. Partly the importance of ensuring the turning circles is that appropriate waste refuge collection vehicles are able to serve those areas, turn at the bottom and come back out. So we are engaging with them to ensure all of these things will be monitored during the trial. There will probably be one or two places where it goes wrong and we don't get it right. We will pick up on that as quickly as possible and make some modifications where necessary. And absolute final comment from me, people did ask all sorts of questions about various other issues, and we know and we've seen from the commonplace feedback that there are a whole host of sort of transport and traffic issues across the area. People are concerned about air pollution, they're concerned about speeding traffic, all sorts of issues around parking and the need possibly for a permit scheme, around the volume of traffic and congestion, particularly on the strategic networks, on the main roads, on the Ulster Road, and also some concerns about pavement cycling, antisocial cycling. So we recognise that people have a whole host of issues. A low traffic neighbourhood is not a silver bullet. It will not solve every single one of these overnight, and it is only a part of the whole sort of package that we're looking to bring forward through the transport plan and through various other projects and initiatives. But by reducing traffic in the area and limiting through traffic so that the majority of traffic on streets is local resident traffic or visitors, hopefully we will see positive benefits on a lot of these things. We know that people are less likely to speed in the area where they live, in many cases to carry out antisocial driving behaviours. People behave differently in their own area than they do elsewhere. So by encouraging reduction in through traffic and a focus on residential traffic, we should see benefits across these things. We are looking to reduce traffic across the city, not just through low traffic neighbourhoods, but through a whole plethora of programmes and initiatives. And I think in terms of pavement cycling and antisocial cycling, generally that is a sign of people not feeling safe to cycle on the streets. And if we can provide people with viable options that they do feel safe to walk and cycle, then we should see a sort of reduction in some of those issues. So I feel that there are a whole range of benefits to introducing low traffic neighbourhoods in Birmingham. I'm really pleased that Kings Heath is one of the 2 pilot areas, and I look forward to working with you all over the coming weeks and months on the delivery of this pilot and beyond, and continuing to work closely with your councillors and engage with you all on how this is delivered. So thank you very much for your time. I will pass back to Councillors Trickett and Leddy to wrap up this evening.
Okay, thanks for that, Joe. Mike, have you got a final point whilst, and then I'll summarise some of the other points that have come up.
Only question was to Joe and Lucy, if the PowerPoint presentation can be made available for everyone to view on Commonplace website, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, we can get that uploaded. It does have to go through Transport for West Midlands at the moment, which can take a day or 2, but we'll get this added, and also we can send it out to people.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Mike. Somebody's just put it in the comment box, but it was actually a point that I was going to be picking up on anyway. I'm very conscious that there are roads. I gave the example of Avenue, where that is impacted by both what is potentially being proposed for Station Roads, York Road and around there, and also the other side of Vicarage Road. So you have Avenue and Vicarage Road that sort of fall between a series of propositions, which is why I'd flagged up we would very much speak and talk to Avenue Road. We're also very conscious that Vicarage Road has multiple issues also. Some of the inconsiderate parking and behaviours of vehicles around the schools on Vicarage Road, buses just discharging their pollution. We have been very clear to the Mayor that in seeking to bring through Kings Heath Station and Sturchley Station, Vicarage Road and what happens with Vicarage Road has to be understood as part of a broader plan, because that road does have to have change. In terms of the speed, we have got some potential options at looking at making the 20 mile per hour more obvious for Vicarage Road, and that is indeed something we're talking to the local engineers on. Another area we are very conscious of is Valentine Road, Ashfield Avenue and Springfield, because again, that is, one is a triangle that falls between, and Lee Serves Road within that. It's a triangle that falls again between a number of proposals. What we have agreed with, we've asked Joe to do tonight, is we will have a very specific event to look and work through what the implications are for those roads, because again, we're absolutely concerned that you will get caught between we don't want you to be caught between 2 LTMs. We will be, speaking to all the key institutes in the area and moving this forward. Again, what I'd like to say is I really thank people for their constructive comments tonight. We will make mistakes. I'm absolutely sure of that, but in many ways I'm not going to make an apology, because it's actually through trial and error and learning from that and engaging with you, hopefully we can at long last, after many decades, start to address some of the concerns that continue to come up in this area about the quality of our environment and the traffic. So do work with us, do bear with us when we get it wrong. We are listening, we are engaging, and again, thank you very much everyone for sharing your very precious time with us tonight, and stay safe. Thank you all.